You ever spend hours studying for something only to wake up the next day and feel like it's all just gone? Poof, vanished. What if I told you there's a way to learn that's smarter, not harder? It's inspired by some of the most effective students on the planet. So today we are going to break down the science-backed study hacks that Japanese students use to remember, well, pretty much everything.
Okay, let's start with a number that's probably going to hit a little too close to home. Nearly 70% of what you study today will be gone by tomorrow. Yep, gone. It is so frustrating, it's demoralizing, and honestly, it just feels like a huge waste of time. But here's the thing, and this is super important. It is not your fault. You haven't been failing. Your method has been failing you. There's a real scientific reason this keeps happening, a kind of silent killer of all your hard work.
You know, there's actually a name for it. It's called the forgetting curve. It was discovered way back in the 1880s, and it basically shows how our brains are literally wired to dump information that we don't use. Within just 24 hours, your brain just clears out the majority of what you learned to make room for new stuff. It's an efficiency thing that, well, really works against us when we're trying to learn something. And yet, get this. In Japan, students have to memorize over 2,000 complex kanji characters, and they remember them for life. See, they're not just studying harder. They've figured out how to completely shatter this cycle.
So, what is their secret, right? How in the world do they just defy the forgetting curve? Well, let's unpack the science-backed hacks they use to study smarter, not longer.
All right, first hack up is something called active recall. And I kind of love this one. Think of it as the samurai approach to your memory. See, most of us just focus on input, reading, watching, highlighting. But real memory, it's not built that way. It's forged in the act of pulling information out of your brain.
So just look at this contrast here. On the left, you've got all the passive stuff we think is productive, like rereading our notes for the 10th time. But on the right, that's the good stuff. That's the active output that actually forges those strong memories, like trying to retrieve information from scratch. Rereading is weak, retrieving is strong. Seriously, think of your memory like a muscle. Every single time you struggle to recall a fact or a concept, that's not you failing. That's you doing a bicep curl for your brain. That little bit of struggle is exactly what builds stronger, more permanent neural pathways.
Okay, so how do you actually put this into practice? It's ridiculously simple. First, learn the material. Then, and this is the magic part, close the book. Put your notes away. Get out a blank piece of paper and write down everything you can possibly remember. Finally, go back and check the original material to see where the gaps were. It's that simple, and it's incredibly powerful.
All right, our second hack is the Kumon method. And this is all about taking these huge, scary, overwhelming topics and just breaking them down into small, powerful daily steps. So instead of staring up at this mountain of information, you just take one single, manageable step at a time. It is the ultimate weapon against cramming.
You've probably heard this idea from James Clear's book, Atomic Habits. It's that whole concept of getting just 1% better each day and how that leads to this massive, exponential growth over time. Well, the Kumon method is just that, but for learning. You master a little bit every single day, which leads to this deep understanding without ever feeling burnt out.
Okay, hack number 3 is what I like to call the gardening technique for your brain. It's called spaced repetition. If active recall is all about building the memory muscle, spaced repetition is the maintenance program. Think of it like watering a plant. You've got to refresh that memory right before it starts to fade away.
So check out this schedule. This is basically the magic formula. You review the material at these increasing intervals. First after 1 day, then after 3 days, then a week, and then a month. Each one of those reviews stops the forgetting curve dead in its tracks and pushes that memory deeper and deeper into your long-term storage. It just gets sharper and more permanent each time.
All right, so these last two hacks, they're not just techniques, they're really two sides of the same coin. It's a whole mindset for reaching mastery. We're talking about Kaizen, this principle of continuous improvement, and Shut-Chu, the art of deep, powerful focus.
So Kaizen is this amazing philosophy of just making these tiny, consistent improvements every single day. It is the absolute opposite of cramming for a test the night before. This is about steady, calm, daily progress that just adds up over time into real mastery. No stress, no burnout.
And here's the part that might just blow your mind. How much time does this actually take to implement? Just 6 minutes a day. No, for real, that's it, 6 minutes.
Let's just break down what that looks like. It's 2 minutes of active recall, just testing yourself on what you learned yesterday, then 2 minutes of spaced repetition, a quick review of something from last week, and finally,
2 minutes of focused practice on a new, tiny concept. I mean, come on, when you see it like that, it feels completely doable, right? But listen, to make those 6 minutes really count, you need the other half of this mindset, shushu. This is the Japanese concept of deep, totally uninterrupted focus. It's all about creating an environment and a mental state where your brain knows without a doubt, okay, it's time to learn.
And you can totally create this state for yourself just by building a simple ritual. Maybe you have a specific spot where you study. Maybe you put your phone in another room, big one. You could even use the same pen every single time you study. These little actions become a trigger, a signal to your brain that says, okay, pay attention, this is important. Okay, so let's put a bow on all of this. What's the big idea here? It's all about shifting from being a passive consumer of information to an active participant in your own learning. Just think about getting good at a sport or a video game. You don't just watch other people play, you practice, you fail, you figure it out, and you get better. Real learning works the exact same way.
So here's where we land. You really have a choice. You can stick with the old way, the hours of rereading, the cramming, the forgetting, feeling totally overwhelmed. Or you can choose the smart way, the daily practice, the few minutes of active work, and that feeling of being completely in control of what you're learning.
And look, I'm just going to be straight with you. The people who really get ahead, the top 1%, they don't just consume information like this and then scroll on to the next thing. They see a better way, and they take immediate action. They're going to try one of these hacks, like today. They're going to commit to those 6 minutes tomorrow. So the only real question left is, what about you? Will you?